Hey people, Stuart Smith here. Today I'm just making a video, cause I'm lazy and I don't really want to make anything and I don't really know what to make for now, so I'm just gonna make a video, basically just talking about Verdant Moon and what I think about it and the game as a whole and where we're at right now as a community and all that. So, hopefully it's not fucking doo-doo, but who knows, maybe I'm just gonna start ranting about Rogue Lineage, which would be pretty funny, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But first, I'm gonna start off with what I like about the game. Like we're gonna keep it simple. We're gonna start off with the likes and not likes, and then just get more into the complexity of the game. But definitely, first starting off with the likes. I like the theming of the game. You know, like color palette, world design, NPCs. It's all pretty nice. I would say NPCs is kind of like hit or miss. You got some interesting NPC interactions and conversations, but you also have that kind of thing that you come from having these games where you just don't care to talk to them a lot of the time, and some of the lore can be just a little bit like, I just don't care to talk to these people, and a lot of NPCs have redundant or just not very interesting things to say at all. But that's like how it is. I also think, this is just a personal thing, but I think Lunarians look really stupid, and I don't know. I just feel like alternate races, I like it when they look kind of just more grounded, because it's like, Lunarians don't look bad. They just look a bit too much, if you know what I mean. But that's a personal opinion. What else do I like about the game? Nothing else. It's all garbage. That's why I play it. No, but I like some of the like lesser ideas. I like the potential we have right now for weapons because Verdant Moon's kind of still young and we have a lot of room to move around. So even if there's something that I don't like, that a lot of it is very easy to change. It's not like systematic. There's a lot of games on Roblox that are like, similar to this that I like, but we've come to a point where we're so far in where we can't really change it anymore, and we just gotta deal with that fact. Where Verdant Moon, you can kind of just do whatever the fuck you want, referring to the developers, which is good. I actually think it's better to have a lot of room to work with, so, that I'm happy for. I really enjoyed exploring the game when I first played it. Of course, like, that always wears off, but, it was kind of nice to just walk around and find all the stuff. I do hope we have more interesting zones added. I really didn't like the snow zone when it was added, just because I hate snow zones in these kind of games. I mean, it's low visibility, and you're usually on a timer, and that's just not fun. And especially the one in Verdant Moon, you got such a low timer where you're just like, ugh. There's not even anything really there, either. Which just kind of sucks. But like, other than that, a lot of the zones are interesting and pretty fun to explore. I like the community. Coming from Rogue Lineage, which, I still play and stuff, the guys, like, even though I love the game, everybody there is kind of a fucking dickhead. And you're never really gonna find people who are chill. In Verdant Moon, you got dickheads, farters, and, thug posters. But, it's not that bad. And you can, like, actually talk with people. I like how there's a lot of people who use voice chat in that. Cause, you go in there and you just start talking to people in-game, and that's cool. It's always fun. You can actually see developers or spec users around more often, because, we're young, we're active, we got all this cool stuff going on. Which is always fun, because, I mean, who doesn't want to interact with Ultra, or, Harmony, or, I guess, Exa? No offense, Exa, you're cute. Wink. But, like, that's not, like, a permanent thing. Eventually, you're not going to see them around as much, just because that's how it is. Interest wanes for everybody, and this goes for spec users too. but it's interesting to see them around right now. I like the title system, although I wish more was done with it. Considering there's a lot of systems being added that give you benefits and stuff, I personally really wish that titles did something. I don't know. It's just there is a lot of them, but it's nice to just have something, even if it's just a little benefit that you can have to be like, oh, this is either for those who are care about the statistics and be like, oh, look, I have a title that gives me 1% more damage or something. Or, oh, I have a title that does this. And if you do implement that, I would hope that you make it actually say what they do, because there's so many of them that, I don't think we have enough community people to go through it all and figure out what each do in an efficient manner. So I think it'd just be for the best if we just knew what they did. But it'd be pretty cool. But titles are cool. You do get a lot of people running around using dumb titles like Demon or Wraith. No offense, guys, I know you fight a lot in the game, but I just don't really care about that, and, it's not very interesting. But to all you people who run around with cool titles like, Nervous, or like, I can't think of any others, but there's a lot of funny ones. It doesn't just have to be funny, but, I like it when you kind of go in for a theme. And your theme isn't dumb. No offense, Flagellant. Your theme isn't very interesting, and I don't really like you. Call out post, haha. But, yeah. Other than that, I like how we can it's kind of more personalized. I don't really like enchantments in the game just because they're boring. Not like, as in, like, it's a bad thing. I don't feel for it. But I like being able to name my weapon, even though most people just name it something stupid. I mean, like, mine is also kind of named something stupid, so I'm not really one to talk. I did like the, comment board or whatever it's called, and factions. I'm actually for a high faction requirement, just because you see less people, in factions, and it makes it more of an interesting thing. And also the board for messages, the message board, even though I don't really put that much on it, it's nice to have community interaction and to bring people together, especially in what's more of a social game, too. It's good to have it so people are talking and interacting with each other, and I think that's a great way to do it. And, feels like you're getting your message out there to other people, hopefully, which is interesting. One thing I would hope for is I do hope that there are more. I hope that we kind of get like events or something, not like seasonal events where it's just like a 2x trinket spawn rate, especially because that doesn't really matter in Verdant Moon. But I hope we get like some cool community interactions that players can participate in, or maybe there's going to be lore events that will happen for a period of time where something might be different and players can go investigate that, and it might change over time. That would be really cool. And I especially think Verdant Moon is a game that would be really suited for that. But it's always up to the developers. And, these guys seem pretty motivated with what they're doing. I like the reworks coming for the weapons, but and this is bringing up one of my major dislikes of the game. I just really don't like the weapons. Not with the weapons chosen. I'm fine with what was chosen. Although I'm more for, like, interesting weapons. I feel like when we go for interesting weapons, we usually fuck it up, because it's not really the developer's fault. It's just hard to do an interesting weapon that either works good, or isn't shit, or isn't too strong. So I understand sticking with the basics. But I just don't really like combat or weapons in the game at all. There's multiple layers. It's slow. It's very slow. It's very passive. You can dash out of basically an M1 combo, and there's very few combos that you can really get people stuck in, and the only combos in the game are basically chasing ragdolls, which isn't really interesting at all. And I mean, you guys might enjoy it, but I guess I'm just a little bit spoiled. I come from games like Rogue and stuff, where even though they have fucking terrible systematic problems with the combat, mechanically speaking, they're actually really well made and super fun and interesting, so I guess I'm just being a little bit of a snob there, but it just, I know we can get better, but as I had previously mentioned, we got room, so if we want us to shoot for something better, unless this is what the community likes, because, you know, it's not just my opinion that matters, it's everybody's. So, you know, if the direction we're going in is where we are right now, I'm fine with that, but, you know, I'd always be super up if we do something different. But, other than that, I also feel the weapons are quite shallow, in the sense of every weapon has 3 abilities, and each of the abilities are just kind of not very interesting. You have, like, Sword, which has a counter, and a 5-hit attack, and then Divine Eruption, which are all, like, fine, but it's just not very in-depth. I really do hope we get supers or something. I don't know if that's the plan, and I don't think it is, but geez Louise, if you guys did that and had more in-depth to it, seriously, that would be great, because even though it seems in Deep Woken they're not doing that kind of stuff, I feel like Rogue really hit it. You feel just kind of like as an Ultra, it feels like you're, like, unique. Like, a base class is really just, oh, you use X weapon, but, you know, when you become a super, it means something. It feels, like, in-depth, like you're actually really doing something, and or you're like a character. You're like somebody who might matter in the universe. Where in, you know, Verdant Moon, when I'm using, like, Axe, which is my favorite weapon, or Sword, which I use to farm, or Greatsword, any of that, I just feel like a guy with 3 moves that kind of just M1s and stuff. It's not really interesting to me, personally, but, you know, there's probably people out there that are fine with it. I'm okay with the alignment system, although I would wish it's a little bit less grindy, because it isn't very, fun. You know, it's just like, you do all this for, like, basically 1 active and 2 passives, and, you know, even though the actives are fine, the passives are fine, it's just really boring, and, you know, I'm gonna be honest, the only reason I did the insight grind is because I found it enjoyable, or not enjoyable, just because I wanted to play the game, but had nothing better to do. I mean, I don't know. I do hope that if you want to implement this system more in depth, you make it so the abilities are just more interesting. Like, one thing that I do hope is don't always take notes from Rogue. I know you guys have inspirations from the game, and there's a lot that Rogue did that was good, but don't take inspiration from Rogue all the time. Max progressing an edict is the most boring thing ever for basically minimal combat reward. I mean, like, for those who are uninformed, edicts are long-term progression in Rogue, kind of similar to insight farming, and basically most of them, like, are good in combat and can give you, like, a serious advantage, but they just aren't interesting in nature. Like, for example, one is you see what your enemy is holding out, which can be useful to predict what abilities they're going to use in Rogue Lineage, but it's just not very interesting. It can be super duper useful, but nobody cares, and it's just like, ugh. Another is just a normal heal, so basically Virtue. It's good, and it can heal you too, but it's just not very interesting again, and it's a very straightforward heal. I think adding conditionals for more benefit, like something where you need to fulfill a certain condition and then your ability will be more useful, is really interesting. You know, there's a ton of ideas, like, you know, you could, how would you say? You could subvert expectations and have a sin heal where you can heal others, but not yourself, only through damaging others and filling an orb with blood or something like that, you know, vampire style. Or, you know, there's a million possibilities. But I think it's a lot more interesting when you take something that already exists and instead of just basically doing it in the most simple, straightforward way, you make it a little bit stronger, but make it so there's more steps and maybe, you know, more interesting effects. Not to say that the effect for Prayer's Heal isn't interesting, it's just very, like, I don't know. What's actually happening isn't that much. You're doing a cool particle effect on yourself to AoE heal people around you. So So you're kind of just like, oh, that's it. Not that it's bad, it's just that it's not incredibly interesting. Um, Sin has a more interesting, look for its ability, but it's still pretty simple in practice and kind of like, I don't know, personally, in my opinion, a little weak. I mean, at most, you're gonna be doing, what, like 20 damage to somebody? Probably less, probably like 17, because it executes at 15% health, which I think with the highest amount of health is like 20, which is like fine, but, it's really not that much damage, and actually you can get about a similar amount of damage with weapon abilities that already exist in the game. I guess it's ranged, and you can use it in combat to knock people over in combo. I don't know. I just feel it's like, we could have more. I feel like that's a big disparity between stuff that players usually get in games and specs. Specs often are like an avenue for developers to basically go wild with their creativity, but sometimes they feel like they need to limit themselves when it comes to their players, which I think is ludicrous. I really think, it's not about strength, it's about depth. Like, Jesters was made unavailable to players because it was too strong, which is reasonable, but there was also never an attempt to make it usable for players. You could literally, I mean, really, if you put in enough effort, you can make anything available to players, like baseline, like actually balanced, if you put in the effort to either make other things stronger around them or, apply enough rules or conditions that they aren't super OP. I do really hope, seriously, that classes and insight and all that is expanded on in a more interesting way, because even though it's all nice where it is now, it's really just the baseline, and I feel like we have a lot of room to expand on. Of course, an actual good side for Verdant Moon on that, though, is we have room to expand on it. It's not like we're in a situation where we're at a creative dump and there's nothing we can do. No, we got a ton of room, and we can do a lot of things. So, it's not like I'm dissing on the game, being like, there's nothing we can do and the game's at a dead end. No, I think there's a lot of space we have to work on things. I think actually we'll be able to do a lot, and hopefully the developers will be able to do a lot. I have a lot of high hopes for the games. I don't think it's gonna be like, how would you say, the craziest game on Roblox ever, but I think for our little community, it can, go places and be interesting and fun. Other than that, we're kind of getting into the things I don't like category now, which is more just a lot of criticisms with hopefully some good, like, things where I can be like, hey, this is what I don't like, but I do actually think this could be done to help fix it, or here's some possible ideas, and, I do think there's a lot of fixes for every problem in the game right now, which is great, because, we don't have that many problems where it's an intangible solution that is basically, like, super difficult to figure out, which is great. But definitely, I think, a major downside, other than just weapons and, insight and all that stuff, is, I just feel like there's not a whole lot of personalization. You have a lot of personalization specifically in a cosmetic perspective to the game, in the sense of, hey, I have a cool title, which is always great, or hey, I'm able to make my Roblox avatar look like however I want, and I'm not limited to, looking how the game wants, although there are some instances where that can be good if you put a lot of effort into it. But I can understand not doing that. Or, hey, my weapon has, the cool lore name that I want, and I have my own cool character reasons for that, even though most people don't play Verdant Moon to RP, because, that's kind of weird, especially in a Roblox game, but, I can respect if people do that. But, like, when it comes to an actual mechanical level, there's very little, basically, customization we actually have access to. You have augments on your weapon, and you have, what, like 6 weapons in the game? Augments are kind of like a dead end. I feel like there's always going to be one that everybody's going to use. That's just a classic kind of problem with those games, when basically augments are only going to one end. I think a great solution for this would be right now, every augment basically fills one of two conditions. Or, well, does one of two things: damage or heals you. And only one heals you, and it's got a really just not very great chance for it. Damage is something that's always going to have one on top for at least every weapon. It doesn't mean that, it's going to be the same for every weapon, but every weapon is probably going to have a best damage one. The only other conditions that gems or augments can fulfill are more not very useful things. You have Mistral knocking people back, and technically Blaze is less for damage and more for, I guess you'd say, like pressure, because they have to constantly roll and stuff. But, I mean, it's not really great. I would really like to see, even though it'd be difficult, augments that fill more of a supportive role. Not like for supporting your teammates, but maybe more of like perhaps you have a covenant or perhaps some sort of thing similar to insight, which you use to augment your weapon in a specific way that's not just like a gem. Gems could be the baseline, but then maybe you have something else you do to get some special gem or special augment or whatever you really want that could do more interesting things, like, slowing your opponent, even though this would need to be tweaked very well. I think if it was done great, it could be really interesting. Or maybe an augment that will go together with an ability or give you an ability that will do something interesting, like perhaps like an augment that most of the time does nothing, but when you fulfill a particular condition or use an ability, your sword, bursts into flames and will put people on fire that they can't put out, or will put people on fire every hit or something, or will constantly poison them or make an aura around you or something. A little bit more on the grounded level here and not like super duper crazy stuff. You could also just have, augments that are like, stun your opponent every once in a while, or drain a little bit of mana on hit. This would be a little invalidating for one trick, so I would say you might want to keep it low. Maybe it's mana steal, which would be a lot more interesting. A little bit of mana back every hit. I don't know how crazy good it would be, but it would be interesting. Maybe one that, opens them up for spell damage for combo classes in Scholar. Especially since Scholar is right now in a situation where it's good, but it's kind of either just good for comboing spells or other stuff. So, hypothetically, you could have this augment where you hit somebody, and then if you hit them with a spell within a certain period of time, they take increased damage or have increased stun. That would be cool. Or perhaps you just have, like a simpler, more kind of just cosmetic augment in the sense of like Nightstone enchant from Rogue Lineage, where when you hit your opponent, it blinds them for half a second. It sounds interesting, like combat-wise, but it's not really interesting. Not really interesting in, like, not really useful, I should say. But it is cool. You hit somebody with something like that, and they're like, whoa, my screen went black. If you were to do that, I'd recommend just go the Rogue Lineage route. 100% proc chance with a really low blinding time. Or I guess you could go for a high blinding time with low proc chance, but I just feel like that would be considered more annoying. Especially if it blinds you for like a long period of time. It'd be like, wow, this barely ever happens, but when it does, I just lose and I can't do anything about it, which isn't really fun. You could also have interesting augments which apply positive conditionals with or positive abilities and negative abilities at the same time. Maybe you have one that chains you and your opponent together every once in a while, so neither of you can go a certain distance from each other without taking damage. But you are stuck staying close to your opponent. So maybe if you're playing against somebody who likes to run a lot, like a push dagger player, no offense, guys, they actually can't make a whole lot of distance between you. But that's, I think that's a lot of ranting about augments, so we'll kind of transition into something else. Like what I think weapons could actually expand on. I previously said that I think they're pretty shallow, which, I don't know if everybody agrees with me with that. But I feel like a great way to expand on weapons is just add a few more abilities. Add a second trainer for every weapon, maybe in new zones. Might take a while, but it'd be really interesting. And maybe add one or two extra abilities and make it like their secondary abilities would be like more either more conditional or just more complex. Like how in Rogue Lineage, base sword can either go from a sword to either great sword with their two abilities, which is a drastic difference, or sigil knight, where they now start enchanting their weapons with effects and stuff, which is a drastic change thematically. If you want weapons to be similar though to how they are and just expanding on what they already have for abilities, that you can of course still keep that. Although I do actually think the whole like dual theming weapons is really fun and interesting, but you don't need to do that. If you want it to be more long-term kind of progression stuff like insight, so people put more time in, that's also fine. There's a lot of room you could have to work with that. Like you could be like, oh, I'm going to make it so you got to put in like either a lot of insight or maybe you need max purity or sin, but when you have it, it's useful. That's the one thing I want, is if you're gonna make it a big grind, make what you get rewarding. It doesn't have to be a lot of something, because if you have 100 regal slashes, you might as well just have had one really cool regal slash. But like, hopefully you just make it interesting. If you're gonna do just one thing per weapon or something, try to think out of the box and do something unique. I know that's always really hard, but you can also always pull your players on the subject, because I think there's a ton of people that have interesting ideas. You could hold a poll or something, or you could be like, oh, submit what you think this should be. I think that there's enough people that are active in the community that we could probably come up with some great and interesting ideas for either new weapon themes or just how weapons could be expanded. I do hope though that weapons don't just be expanded in an uninteresting or unfun way. Even though I really liked the Greatsword rework, and I think it actually brings more to the weapon, I really don't like new Greatsword. It's not really fun to play, in my opinion, or fun to play against. It just feels like you have a big sword and you're hitting fast with it, but your hitbox just feels a little bit weird. It kind of feels like you're like not going for a big hit with a big weapon, which makes no sense. As in, you got like not actually a really long hitbox. Fortify kind of feels redundant and always has, in my opinion, because it just opens you up for a lot of damage, and there are certain weapons that can out DPS you, so even if you're up there tanking somebody, you just kind of get fucked in the butt. I don't really like how Demon, like Giant's Wrath or whatever, kind of is just a free ability, and for your opponent, they're at least going to get hit by it once, and they just have to make distance between you. I really hope that we get something like perfect blocking in Verdant Moon, because there's just really like not a whole lot of combat interactivity. If somebody's doing something like Giant's Wrath, you just have to make distance, and that's basically the option, or the best option for every single ability in the game. Just make distance. There's like 3 abilities in the game that you should just block instead, and I think that's really stupid. Like, I'm not trying to say make stuff blockable, but, either add more defensive options or add perfect blocking, however you see fit, but please, give people more options. Or make it so just running away is less of a versatile and useful way to basically not take damage. You always need this kind of dynamic where you have running away and staying and fighting, making distance and blocking. There should always be a dynamic where if you stay and block in front of them, not only are you not making distance between them, so you still have options to fight, but they still have options to fight you. So it's more dangerous for you, but can be more rewarding. Where in this game right now, basically somebody can combo you, and since there's so few abilities where There's end lag. They can just make distance, and you basically just it didn't matter, and you're more likely to take damage. And especially considering it's so easy to make distance right now, which should probably be more of a safer option with, less reward. Makes sense. Or if you get caught out, you're in more of a bad situation, which is the case in Verdant Moon, but it's really hard to catch somebody out because everybody moves at the same speed. I understand the whole walking backwards thing, but I feel like we might have some better options for it. If we ever progress farther into weapons, you could always go the route of, more damage for less speed. Not as in your weapon speed, but your actual speed in combat, that is. It could always be interesting, but we have room to work, and, there's a lot of systems we could delve into if we want to. So we're not limited by that. Another thing that I feel like could make combat more interesting is right now I feel spells are kind of... It's weird. Spells in Verdant Moon feel hollow to me, even though I've played games with kind of more hollow spell systems that feel more interesting. I'm not really sure why, but I just feel like spells serve a very just simple, practical value, and something about that is eh. In a game like Rogue Lineage, if any of you have played, your main two go-to spells as a normal class is basically Ignis and Gelidus, which are the same spell, except one is a little bit longer and ice instead of fire. You'd think this would be pretty boring, but for some reason, it's just better. It just feels like you use Ignis and Gelidus usually in combination with your class, and it feels more of an extension of your class even when you're not a mage. Where in Verdant Moon, spells kind of feel like a necessity and feel less like an extension and more like something you're using when you have no room to do anything else. Like, it just kind of feels like something you do when you have free time and mana. And you also usually use a very similar set of spells, Most people's go-tos are Ruinam. Makes sense, because, it's Ruinam. But it's just kind of boring. I really do hope we can expand on spells. I really couldn't say how, but I think an M2 for spells would be interesting. Snap style in Rogue Lineage. It's not necessary, though. It's just I feel the system right now could probably be better. We could always have mage classes, too, but that can be a slippery slope, because in Rogue Lineage, mage classes, when you're playing them, feel boring and kind of weak, and when you're playing against them, are extremely irritating and feel OP, so... If we were to go that route, we'd have to be pretty careful not to have just really oppressive, fighter to fight against and really kind of weak feeling to fight with. It's actually really a weird dynamic. We're not going to go into in-depth about it because I did say that I wasn't just going to rant about Rogue Lineage, but it's quite interesting how you can have something that feels weak to play sometimes, but really fucking gay to play against. If you do think of implementing mages, don't go the route of Rogue Lineage where basically the go-to for every mage is CC, because that's not fun. I think it'd be more interesting to have more of a supporting kind of mages. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but if you've ever played games like League of Legends or stuff like that, we're not trying to go for something like Rise, where, he usually CCs into a very high damaging combo, but instead maybe something more like, not exactly like this, but a similar playstyle, maybe not, and considerably less annoying to play against, hopefully, if we could make it possible, like Vladimir, where his playstyle is a lot more aggressive, where he's constantly moving around you, and is actually quite tanky, and basically his playstyle is just wearing you down until he can hit his, his big thing. Or maybe we could, I think aggressive mages are fun, but just be careful with that. Defensive mages are also really interesting, and everybody loves a supportive mage, clerics and stuff like that. If you do plan to go the route of clerics or supporting mages, of course, direct healing wouldn't really be interesting, so I think more supportive roles, maybe buffing and stuff like that would be cool. It would also be cool if we had more supportive spells. Isikos is probably the most utility spell in the game, but it's really not useful because it's just impractical to ever really use except to cancel fall damage. But You could always, you know, like add spells that are useful for factions and using on your teammates, especially considering now that you like play with friends. I think Verdant Moon is a game that would benefit more from a spell like Celeritas from Rogue Lineage, which is basically a spell that you hold on somebody to make them go slightly faster than Rogue Lineage would, considering it's a lot of a slower game and, you know, stuff like that. I would also like kind of talking more about general game things I would like a lot more. I'd really like if the dueling arena counted towards your actual kills, or you could actually challenge people to single 1v1s in the dueling arena that couldn't be interrupted by other people. I don't know if that's a plan, but right now the dueling arena is kind of hollow and just a place you go to fuck around, especially since it doesn't count towards your kill progress. So you can't even really go in there and fight people for titles. I know it's for farming, but, you know, I feel like we could probably find a way to make this system work better. Maybe just make it really inconvenient for people to farm it. Like, you have to press yes 3 times on a menu or something like that. Or just add the, you know, or just keep the 1 minute cooldown timer, which, I mean, you should probably already have for killing people over and over again. Another interesting system in the game I would like is... There's a few ways I can think of this working. I know how developers have gate, but I'd really like if players had some faster form of travel. It doesn't need to be added. I think actually, if you make the world bigger, I'd rather that you didn't. We're in an interesting space where the world is small-ish. And we don't go that fast around it, unless you be using mirrors and stuff, or paintings, sorry. But I feel like it's just small enough that it's really annoying to get around if you aren't a painter. But it's not, and it doesn't feel big enough where that slowness of travel kind of gives you a little bit of oomph. I feel like the world of Rogue Lineage without gate to traverse can be boring if you're just trying to farm stuff, but when you really think about it, it can be really something. It's hard to describe. It's one of those kind of intangible feelings, kind of like a Morrowind thing, where really the only fast travel you have are very few and scattered around. So actually traveling to places means something. Right now I feel like in Verdant Moon, it's just small enough that traveling to places doesn't really feel like it means anything, but you still gotta travel around and it takes a while, which can be kind of annoying. I do also hope there's more locations of significance. I just feel right now in Verdant Moon, basically the only locations of significance we have are kind of uninteresting and just eh. I would love not to see giant cities and stuff, especially since that's not really the theme of the game. But, you know, maybe ruins and stuff you can explore and more lore for it. I really don't like how the only lore right now we kind of have is minor lore for every area, and then a lot of lore on kind of the way that the world ended and all that, and the song. I'm not a huge fan of the whole song just plot in the game. I don't really like it. It kind of feels eh to me. But I do like the theming of the world and all of that. So I do hope we get a better look at the world and, you know, the places and stuff like that. I do hope that NPCs in areas, though, don't just try to expedite to you. It kind of feels like in a lot of areas where people will tell you important stuff, where most people don't tell you anything at all, and then there's one guy that tells you everything. Or, you know, similar stuff like that. I might be wrong on that, though, because my recollection, it's not, like, the biggest priority for me, the lore of the game. So, you know, if I'm wrong on that, just correct me in the comments and call me stupid. I'll be fine with it. What else? I do hope we get more variation of zones. I feel right now, the only unique zone is the snow zone, and even then, it's an annoying zone, so you don't really get a bask in the cool difference between everything right now. Because right now, the main zones, and really what they consist of, is rocks and trees. Basically, the only color palette we see in the game is green and gray, which is cool, but, you know, I'd love to see not a touch of color, but just a different set of colors. new areas that are different. If you guys don't feel like that's where you want the game to go, that's understandable, but I would love to see either a desert, or cave, or lava, or something interesting. I would hope that you do an actual snow zone where we're not pressured on a time limit, and we really get to bask in the interest of the snow. Um, if you want to do something like that, though, don't just make it the same where it's low visibility and a bunch of rocks they have to climb over. What's really interesting about a sand zone is, or sorry, not a sand zone, a snow zone, is when it's a large flat plain. And if you really, want to keep that kind of horror vibe, a large plain where there's things that you can't see, but you swear you keep seeing every hour. And, there's one village in the middle, and you swear there's stuff out there, but every time you go out, you see nothing. I don't know. I'm more of a Mountains of Madness kind of snow desert kind of guy as opposed to um, I can't think of a kind of like, I guess a rogue lineage snow desert kind of guy. I really love the horror theme that can be paired with snow, but Verdant Moon's really not the game for that, so my opinion isn't really great on the subject. What else? I do hope, that we don't go like too far. In the sense of, I feel like there's a few art assets in the game that feel a little bit too like artsy fartsy for me. I really don't like the moon asset. Not because it's like too complex, but because it just doesn't feel right. It's a little bit too big. It might be intentional that it's closer to planet Earth, but it kind of bends my it just looks weird to me. That's my personal opinion. So I hope we don't go a little bit too much in it. It's nice to see kind of city ruins and all this stuff that's quite grounded with all of these weird elements and stuff like that. Oh, another thing that I just thought about. I do hope that if we get more mobs, they're more interesting. I do like the mobs in the game right now, and they're all cool and all, but they're just not very unique. Twigs are cool. They're your generic guy that goes around. Golem is a big enemy, and probably the most unique in the game, actually, because it doesn't basically rely on the same moveset as every other enemy. Abyssal Assassins are basically just fast push dagger players. Literally, that's it. The Angel is just you, but with faster attacks. And even though to some of you, you might be like, wow, he's actually got really great I just personally feel it's not very great because he basically just transitions between two states, which is I want to attack you and I don't want to attack you, and he just dashes when he doesn't want to attack you constantly every time you try to attack him, which I mean it's hard to imitate player characters, so I get it, but it's just bleh. And then you have the Reapers and the Greatswords, which are just player characters, basically, with a shadow teleport that will transition every once in a while to teleport behind you every time you attack, or just around you, always behind you. So I do hope if we get more enemies, we go for something crazy, but don't feel forced to. It's always great to have just your average humanoid around, because, they're very grounded, and they work well, and, they can fill up an area pretty easily. Goblins exist so we can have dragons in D&D, I do hope we have more things that are supposed to be done by multiple players. I'd love to see a dungeon or a boss. That might be really hard, but it would be amazing in my personal opinion. And I feel like it would be great to see players cooperating, because Verdant Moon is really a game that I feel like, if just the right touches are added, could be a great game for cooperation between players, especially since the community right now, I feel, would be in a really open state to do that. What else? I would really hope that we get more interesting, maybe Rogue Lineage artifact type progression, but don't take the missteps that Rogue Lineage did, in the sense of, artifacts can be can make such a big difference in a fight that if you don't have them and you're fighting somebody that does, it can just feel so terrible and can literally be the tipping point in multiple fights. But the rarity of them is like less than 1% spawn rate every hour. So you get into this situation where you fight people with artifacts and you're just like, I want an artifact, but the difficulty to get one is so absurd and unfun. Um, so perhaps just make them cosmetic, or maybe make it so they're rewarded through a challenge instead of RNG, especially considering that in Rogue Lineage, basically all the good stuff is rewarded through RNG, which is just really stupid and not fun, because you get a lot of people who don't deserve them getting them, and a lot of people who like will farm for a great period of time and never find any at all, which just sucks. So if you make some sort of challenge or dungeon, perhaps adding some cool, interesting loot that might just be cosmetic, or might actually give some benefits, would be really cool. Geez, what else? I've talked about a lot. I do hope that spec users, there are some really cool ones out there that are fun to interact with, but there's a lot of them that aren't really fun to interact with from a player perspective. No offense to you guys, but especially people like, like Benson. No offense, Benson, because you're cool, but you kind of are a dickhead, and you give a bad look for people who are spec users. Like, for the average player who just starts having the game, having a guy gate on you and kill you with just some crazy greatsword plus a dev spec isn't really fun. I guess not a dev spec. Like, I'm not saying to stop doing that. I'm just saying it'd be cool to have more player interactivity with these guys, because basically the only interactions that most people get with you guys is basically just walking up to them, maybe saying hi, and they gate away, or walking up to them, maybe saying hi, and they fight you and kill you with their spec, which isn't fun. I feel guys like, geez, I can't think of him, but the guy with the trumpet, even though I've talked with him a bit. Sorry for not remembering your name, that's my bad. Um, he's kind of cool. He's cool to talk to in the Discord. He's a little bit of a shitter with his spec, but he's a cool guy, and it's fun to interact with him. I've seen, like, Iltria said your name right that time, if you got this far in the video. I'm sorry for mispronouncing it. I just can't. I'm just stupid. And Harmony, but I haven't really seen them interact with players. And I'm not saying, like, don't attack players when they're attacking you and stuff like that. I'm just saying maybe try to, like, play your character. I know a lot of spec characters and people in Roblox don't really care about, you know, being their character, especially when they're a lore character in their game. But it can be really cool. Not everybody's into it, but, you know, I think a great interaction that I previously had that really gave me this opinion is in Rogue Lineage, there's a guy called Doc, and I don't really have to describe his lore character or anything like that, especially since he wasn't really playing his lore character. He was just being a cool kind of guy to interact with. But, you know, I was in a private server, and I walked up to him and I said hi, and instead of just saying hi back, he bows to me, and for the next 15 minutes, he kind of just, like, interacts with me through the little, like, animations and gestures through the game, which I thought was really cool. I'm not saying you all have to do stuff like that. I'm just saying it's cool when you walk up to somebody and you interact with them and they're like, you know, I'm fucking whatever Benson's character is, you know, I'm like the destroyer of the moon or whatever the fuck it's his lore is supposed to be. And he really acts out that character, and maybe he, you know, even talks a little bit about what he thinks his character is, or maybe just delves in depth more about the game and gives you some cool information that you can't just get from talking to an in-game NPC. I don't know if a lot of these guys are willing to have that responsibility, though, because it can be kind of hard to keep up the appearance and detract from the game sometimes, so that's not something that I would say that is necessary. It just would be fun for people. I really do like some of the dev specs visual stuff. Vincent looks really cool, and especially like his weapon usually what goes really well with his theme. I think that kind of stuff is cool. I would like to see more of that. If you're planning on making more specs, make something that's interesting from a lore perspective for players, if you do care. Because I see a lot of guys with Gate, which is really boring. I feel like Gate's great for travel, and it's good for you guys to all meet up and talk with each other. So I think, you know, for your friends, it's a great prerequisite. But if you want them to give them a more cool, personalized spec, maybe be like, hey, what do you want for your, you know, kind of like for the character you play, but I don't really know. I'm not great for that kind of stuff, and I don't program Roblox games, so I'm not a fucking great person to ask on the subject. Overall, though, I would say a lot of the specs are interesting to interact with and see. So, that's something. What else is there? I would like some more interesting use of music. I actually enjoy most of the music in the game, although I've come to a point where I've muted it just because I don't really care to hear it anymore, which I feel like is a problem with the game. It's a bit too forward, but like the music it is a bit forward, but it's the kind of stuff that you can't listen to for hours on hours, so it gets kind of annoying. I would hope that for some of the more forward songs used, we get some more interesting stuff. I know you don't have that many people that do music, so you know, don't feel crazy pressured. But I'd love if if we are to get some more forward stuff, it'd be more interesting than the combat theme because it's just not very interesting. Or for background themes, we get some more kind of less forward but less kind of depressing. I didn't really think any of the music was super overly depressing, but I know some of my friends really were bothered by kind of like how every song basically always featured a piano and kind of just felt really drab. I don't really think that myself, but my recording cut out there, so I think this is probably a good point to end the video. I didn't really talk about that much else after I said but yeah, I think that's it. I just wanted to end this video off though with, thanks for all the support I've been getting from everybody. It's really great. If you guys like have any ideas for videos, put them down in the comments because I fucking don't have any ideas right now. I also wanted to end this video off. I don't know if you're gonna get to this part, Iltria, if you even watch this, because I don't really know if you actually watch my videos. I mean, you did you did watch my thug posting video, which I thought was really funny. No thanks. But I'm not super like chained to Verdant Moon right now, but I would love to be more like invested in the community and basically I'm just saying I base I want the YouTuber role. And I'm willing to do whatever I need to do. If I need to hit sub goals or I need to, like be more invested with the community and play the game, I'll do that because, I care about Verdant Moon enough that I'm willing to put in the hours and put in the work. And, I hope I can do that. I know this might sound like kind of like I'm asking too much, and if it does, please just deny me because I don't want to be forcing this. But yeah, less about me, more about what you guys are doing for me. Thanks for watching my videos. I'm sorry I don't play the game as much and appear as much in the game. I've just been doing other stuff right now, like gaming, like not real life stuff. I have nothing going on in my life. But it's always great to see you guys in the game and be like, you're the YouTube guy. I know I act like kind of an asshole in the game, and I'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about, but, it's always, it really is fun. And, yeah. Also, kind of just like an end of video funny call out. The guys who have Conscript House, I really don't like how you use special characters in all of your like role names. It just looks really dumb. So I'm calling you out right now. Fight me in real life. I live in hell, so I'll be waiting for you guys here. And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed.